Would you like to accelerate your career and reach your full potential in just minutes a day? Welcome to the LEADx Show with New York Times best-selling author and Inc. 500 entrepreneur, Kevin Kruse.
What are 4 powerful ways to build your confidence? Hello, everyone. Kevin Kruse here. Today, we're going to learn how you can lead yourself and others to great success. But first, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at leadx.org. Each super short issue has actionable tips to advance your career and to fulfill your potential. Visit leadx.org. Our guest today is a retired U.S. Marine who's been featured in Forbes and Fast Company. And you may have seen her as a guest on CNBC, CNN, or Fox News. She's a keynote speaker and best-selling author of Leading from the Front and her newly released Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. She's the co-founder of LeadStar, Angie Morgan. Welcome, Angie.
Hey, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And we're going to talk about Spark in just a minute. But I want to start by asking a question that our listeners are just always curious about. Can you share a time, maybe early in your career, when you failed at something, and what did you learn from it?
Just one, right? Just one failure? Because I failed many times. Oh, gosh, the very first thing that comes to mind, and it's embarrassing even to talk about. I did start my career after college. I was an officer in the Marine Corps, and I spent a great time, mostly stationed in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, I was responsible for a program with some of the schools. It was bringing Marines to talk about healthy lifestyles to different island schools. Well, I was responsible for all aspects of planning, coordinating with the helicopter squadrons, coordinating with the Marines who were actually going to go there and just do some really good community relations work. Well, one thing about me is I'm not detail-oriented. I'm probably not the best person to be planning this type of operation. And in Hawaii, to me, everything just sounds the same. So in the planning, I totally got the name of the school wrong. It was really switching a few letters. And here we were, a Marine helicopter and, 2 helicopters and about 30 people landing at the wrong school, all as a result of just my failure to pay attention to the details. And then when we get there, the helicopters landed. It was a mess. We're at the wrong school. I was embarrassed, but the helicopters actually one of them had some mechanical issues, so we were stuck there with the school who was surprised. The school we were supposed to be at, they were disappointed, and it was all on me. And so what I learned from that experience is know your weaknesses and, really work hard to compensate for them. Don't just brush them off, but also surround yourself with people who compliment you in areas perhaps where you're weak. But gosh, just talking about it, it was so embarrassing.
That is a great story, Angie. And I'm a single dad with 3 kids, and so every night, I'll ask them at dinner, how was school today? And it's like fine. It's so hard to get them to talk. I'm sure all of those students sure had a story to tell their parents at the dinner table that night.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they did. But it's exciting and scary, and it was embarrassing. But again, I think about failure often, and what's gotten me here to this place today is really how you respond to it. I was embarrassed. I shrunk a little bit from it, but grew from it too. So
That's great. So, Angie, your book is Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. And let's just start at the beginning. Why is it titled Spark?
Well, with the work that my colleagues and I've been doing, what we do is go into organizations and train and develop leaders. What we always find is that the people who stand out in our workshops and our consulting work aren't necessarily the title holders. They're just the people who get things done. And with a little bit of leadership training and development, they're able just to capitalize and expedite on their success. Those are sparks. Those are people who've got a lot of really raw, good material, insight, training, development, whatever you want to call it. They just take off. And the leadership guidance that my co-authors and I promote, we're all military veterans, it's not, rocket science. It's actually behavior-based leadership practices, and it shouldn't be mysterious. So we write about behaviors that anyone can develop to really, take charge of their career, take charge of their life, and seek out the success that they want to experience.
Great. And your book is packed. I mean, each chapter, it's got great content. I mean, you cover leadership myths, character, accountability, a lot of hot topics in leadership. But because we only, have such a short time together today, I want to focus on one topic, which is confidence. And, why do you say that confidence is so important?
Well, if I think about, for myself and certainly for other people as well, but if I think about every single success I experienced or every single failure I experienced or risk I took, a lot of it had to do with my confidence level. I think confidence is one of those take it for granted traits, or even that people think you're born with it or you're not. But what was enlightening for me when I was researching confidence was that it was an emotion. And like any other emotion, then it can be managed. And it can be managed so it's there for you. I love the great Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So much of our success is just really in our beliefs about our abilities, and that's confidence. It is your belief in the moment about your abilities to either succeed or to fail. And so we really wanted people with Spark, but in all the chapters, but this one specifically, was just really get into their head and think about what they believe about themselves.
And this is great because you do point out, confident isn't a skill, and you say, you don't support that old line, fake it until you make it. You say it's an emotion, but it is an emotion that can be developed and managed. So, what are some of the ways we can build or feel greater confidence?
We write about 4, and I'll start at the very first one that we talk about, and it seems sort of nuanced. It's called experiencing your success. Note that it's not achieving success, it's experiencing success. I think we all know someone in our lives who, on paper or at a glance, are very successful. They've got the fast car, they've got the beautiful house, they've got the many degrees, they've got money, they've just got all those things. That person had no problem achieving in their life. But because you know this person well, you know that deep down they're insecure. Well, that person, again, they've achieved a lot, but through the path on their journey, they haven't really stopped for a moment to recognize and experience that their success was due to them. So they blow past milestones where they do great things onto the next thing without recognizing that they were in control of the results that they experienced. And why this matters is that later in life, when we're faced with new challenges, when we're faced with new opportunities, we need to have a ready reference of the last successes that we experience so we can build off of those. You've likely heard of the phrase that's been popular in the business world about imposter syndrome, that people rise to a certain level of success. Yeah, and they don't feel like it's theirs. Well, when you experience your success, you do feel like it's yours. And I think for all of us who want to feel, confident, not insecure, this is just a really great practice to develop.
It's a great reminder because I think, many of us were raised and sort of told to be humble, and it's not all about you. And, anybody who has experienced success, they've had a team behind them. There's a lot of messages around, not sort of owning the successes that you've had. And just as more and more we're counseled to understand our strengths and kind of lead with our strengths, I think this is a good message of remember our successes and acknowledge, our deserved role in those achievements. So we, like you said, so it's not just knowing them in the back of our mind or giving credit to someone else, but experiencing them as well. And what do you mean? Because I know the second one is developing positive self-appraisals. What is that?
Yeah, it's it's self-talk. It's pure natural self-talk. It's those Stuart Smalley moments, if you remember that beloved pseudonym. It's about really paying attention to your internal dialogue and recognizing that sometimes you're not on your side when you need to be. It's like going into a job interview going, geez, I don't really belong here. I hope I get it. Versus, you know what? I do belong here. I really think I'm going to nail this. What we say to ourselves really poises us for the moment. And that's really critical. I think a lot of times professionals who I meet, they don't pay attention to whether or not they're on their side. And going back to that Henry Ford quote, our beliefs and our capabilities have a tremendous influence over the outcome. And Kevin, I love that you talked earlier just again about being humble. I think that it's important when we talk about like experiencing success, to be, humble externally. But when we're talking about experiencing success and self-appraisals, these are all things that are internal to you. So I would never say walk around proud as a peacock, displaying all your successes everywhere. I think modesty is a great thing. But when it comes to thinking about what you're capable of doing, really just pay attention to what's going on inside your mind.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, when I first hear of like self-talk, and like I said, we think of a funny SNL sketch, or I think, what, this hardcore Marines talking about, these little self-talk things. Is she really doing that? But you hit it with it's really about these beliefs. And I was just talking to a well-known sports psychologist. And he said people really do not understand how powerful the mind is, and that we've got these unconscious beliefs, ones that we're not fully certain of, and self-talk works. He says there's the way you can use your conscious thoughts to shape your unconscious is through these self-appraisals, this self-talk, all the time to kind of reprogram ourselves. He says it's very effective.
No, I think so. And I think no matter where you are in your career, it's to check in with these concepts. I think that I'm a fairly confident person. Yet, I find myself, there's a story in the book about that. I find myself sometimes beating myself up or berating myself versus being on my side in moments that matter most. And so I really do think that, again, no matter where you are in your professional journey, it's really important to check in with yourself.
Great. And you said there were 4 keys, and the third one I know is about surrounding yourself with role models, positive role models. Tell me more about that.
Well, we're surrounded by ourselves a lot of times with people we had no hand in selecting, right? The people we work with, the people we exchange communications with on a daily basis. And if you let anyone and everyone and their demeanor and their words influence how you feel about yourself, you're going to be on an emotional roller coaster. It's really important to have positive role models in our lives whose thoughts can help build us up versus break us down. So when we say surround yourself with positive role models, it's really about having a filter for whose opinion influences your powerful impression of yourself. Because if it's anyone and everyone, you're going to, again, be in a confidence roller coaster. But if it are a core group of people whose opinions you value, who will tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear, you're going to be in good shape. And I think that there are people who say, well, I don't let anybody influence my opinion of myself. Well, I would say that could be arrogance, right?
Right.
Overconfidence. I think there's people in our life who we need to hear.
Yeah, I like that word filter because I often talk about, even from an employee engagement standpoint, emotions are contagious. They spread like the flu. So if the people around you are down, you're going to feel down. If they're up and optimistic, you're going to be a little more optimistic. And so you can't control everyone who's around you at work, but you don't have to take all their opinions, all their feedback, all their comments the same way, and to realize who the positive people are, who the people that you respect are, and try to surround yourself with them makes a lot of sense. And what's the last method to increase our confidence?
And that would be that just managing those confidence-killing emotions, which we call fear, insecurity, and worry. I'm sure somebody who's listening to this, they probably could qualify for the Olympic worrying team or are paralyzed by fears. And we were talking before the call about you and your connections with some Navy SEALs. I've got a great friend who is a Navy SEAL, and he's led at the highest, most elite levels within the SEAL teams. And I love that he always talks about fear openly. And he's like, do I feel fear? He's like, absolutely. I feel fear often, but normally it's a red flag for me to take action. And that's what the message that we want to share with people developing their leadership skills, specifically their confidence. When they do things for the first time or when they really feel like they're pushing themselves, it is very natural to feel fear. It is just one of those natural human emotions. But what you do with that is key. Do you become paralyzed for it, or do you use some of the anecdotes to fear, to worry, to insecurity? And that the anecdotes are often action and just challenging ourselves. What can I do in the moment? Or acknowledge your fears. I do feel fear, but what do I need to do to get over this? And that's, to me, really important. And if you feel insecurity, and whenever you try to compare yourself to somebody else, yeah, you're going to feel insecurity, but go back to step number 1. Remind yourself of your successes that you've had and build yourself up. It's, so yeah, I mean, those are the 4 steps of building confidence. And, at a glance, when you're reading them, they seem simple and it's easy to understand, but in the moment, really hard to do, which is why it's really important to have strategies that you can continuously implement.
Yeah, it's interesting about the fear and the fact that even the Navy SEAL says, yeah, I feel fear all the time. So it's not that, our heroes or these high achievers don't experience fear. I liked what you said. It was almost like a flag to take action. And I read something, I mean, it was a little simplified, but, it said something like, unless you are in physical danger, when you feel fear, use it like a compass. Fear is your compass unless you're in physical danger. You kind of lean into it. This is the stuff that it means, you're pushing yourself, you're doing good stuff. And it's great to just know that everybody experiences it. It's not a flaw or a failing of yours, to feel it.
Oh, totally true.
Angie, one more thing on confidence, as you were talking about the 4 steps. I mean, what do you think about those who would talk about are there things physiologically we should be doing to try to increase our confidence? I'm thinking about either the work of Amy Cuddy, who talks about power poses, or military psychologists who will talk about doing certain things physically to try to reduce stress. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Amy Cuddy's work, and I feel like there are some tactics, right, that are there to implement to help you manage those moments where you need confidence the most. And, from the military perspective, the way that we addressed some of those short-term tactical, confidence building emotions is rehearsals, right? We rehearsed so much before we ever did anything. So, for example, if you're nervous about a presentation and you need confidence, next week to get you through it, rehearse, prepare before you go in, do your power poses and whatnot that Amy Cuddy promotes. What we promote, though, are lifelong strategies, which I think really complement some of those short-term tactics. So you can have your tactics in your back pocket. Like, again, have your dialogue, your
Right.
positive self-appraisal dialogue ready, get your poses, prepare. And those will certainly help you in the moment. But we like to think, too, about those longer-term strategies, so you rely less on the short-term tactics to get you through.
Makes sense. Angie, before we wrap up, I like to challenge our listeners to become 1% better every single day. So what's something that you could challenge them to do, at work, at home, wherever, something they could try out today?
Oh, that's a really great question. Thanks for giving the opportunity to chime in. And it relates to confidence, but it also relates to, a concept that many people have talked about is just self-actualization. What I care most about when I work with and I'm surrounded by people is helping them just achieve results that surprise even themselves. And so one of the things I find with professionals is that they undersell themselves when they look into the future. They underestimate the great things they have yet to do. So if, people have 10 seconds today or a minute today, what I like them to do is to stop, think 10 years down the road about where they are, what they're doing, who they are. And even if the picture is a little fuzzy, just try as best as you can to get it a little bit clear and raise your expectations with that picture. I think, again, we often sell ourselves short for what we can do in our lives. And if we just raise the bar on our expectations, we can go pretty far.
I love this challenge, Angie, because I always say, goal setting is a powerful tool, and my biggest failure over the years is always setting the bar too low. Even when it seems at the time like I've set it as high as I could reasonably set it, once I get there, I think, oh my gosh, like why did I settle for this? Why wasn't the bar set higher? Picture yourself 10 years from now with no limits. That is great. Angie, what's the best way for people to find out more about you, your company, your books?
Yeah, thank you. Two ways. My business is LeadStar, so leadstar.us. And more about the book is sparkslead.us. So sparkslead.us. And again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I think your work is great. And so thank you for doing what you do, Kevin.
Oh, thank you, Angie. All right, friends, you've just been mentored by leadership expert Angie Morgan. Check out her books on Amazon.com or your favorite bookstore. You'll be able to get the links she mentioned and show notes from this interview over at leadx.org. One more thing, if you've gotten even one new idea from the LEADx show, please take a minute to leave a short, honest review on iTunes or Stitcher, because the more reviews a podcast gets, the more likely it is that that show is going to be shown to new listeners. Leadership isn't about a title or power or authority. It's about influence. I'm a leader. You are a leader. We're all leaders. The question is, who are you going to lead today?